Losing the Plot, Chapter 14. I couldn't understand what the trolls were saying exactly, as they were speaking in some kind of indecipherable troll language. However, I guessed that the topic of conversation might feature me, as they regularly broke off from what they were saying and looked longingly over in my direction. It's nice to be admired from a distance, normally, but not by a troll. I hope that they merely just wanted to eat me, as I really didn't like the idea that they wanted to interfere with me in some other way. It was bad enough that I was dreaming about them again, but for this dream to become sexually deviant with me as the hapless victim was a bit too much. What made it even more unpalatable was the fact that one of them had taken on the unmistakable features of the sociopathic service station manager, Nigel. Was my exhausted yet buzzing brain really going to force me into some kind of bestial sex encounter with a troll called Nigel? Was that something I deserved after such a demanding week? It didn't look too promising. Nigel Troll was definitely giving me lascivious looks while touching himself inappropriately. It's very weird being in a dream and being aware that you are actually in that dream. It is, however, even weirder still when the dream that you are in is so utterly and comprehensively fucked up. The trolls were now no longer talking. Instead, they were just staring at me with fixed expressions of troll-like thicky denseness. Nigel Troll was dribbling and farting, which certainly didn't add to his desirability as a potential lover. Suddenly, he broke away from the others and lumbered towards me, breaking wind and salivating as he walked. I wondered when the nightmare would end. Now would be a good time, I thought. According to dream experts, dreams aren't meant to be longer than a minute, so surely this one, which felt like it had been going on for weeks, was well beyond its expiration time. Unable to move, I braced myself for the imminent arrival of the Nigel Troll and his large, overexcited appendage. But then, out of nowhere, a beautiful elf maiden riding a white unicorn charged into view and unleashed a blinding light that instantly transformed all the trolls into stone, which was a relief, I can tell you. Now, perhaps in the dying moments of my dreamscape, I might wangle a quick shag with the recently arrived elf maiden. After my troll trauma, I certainly felt like I deserved it. The elf maiden was already disrobing, which was a promising start. But, hang on a mo. Didn't I recognise her from somewhere? Oh, shit, it was Lucy. This felt very awkward. I knew it was a dream, and so it didn't really count, but even so, Lucy, I just didn't feel that comfortable about it. I expressed my reservations to the Lucy elf, but all she could say was, "Don't worry, chill out and do me fast and hard, big boy." However, as this was all going on inside my head, I wasn't totally convinced that her opinion could be trusted. From what strange little recess of my psyche was this all coming from? Did I secretly lust after Lucy? Did she secretly lust after me and I just hadn't picked up on the signals? Was the whole saving me from bestial buggery just some kind of Freudian thing? And was my subconscious trying to tell me that only Lucy could save me from my inner demons? It occurred to me that I should probably stop over-analysing and just plough on with what, at the end of the day, had turned out to be a very pleasant erotic coda. But it was too late. Before I knew it, the naked Lucy elf maiden creature had evaporated, and instead I found myself staring at a troll-shaped damp patch on the ceiling of our Hammersmith flat. "Are you all right?" said Anne, who was sat up in bed hugging her iPad. "Yeah, fine." Yeah, I mumbled, struggling to reacquaint myself with my new surroundings. It had only been a couple of weeks, but already our bedroom felt strangely alien to me. What's the time?" 9:15, time for you to rise and shine," said Anne. "We've got a packed schedule for today." "Really?" I said, unable to conceal my disappointment that Anne had already knocked up an itinerary for the day. What I craved more than anything else was the opportunity to zone out in front of some rubbish TV while stuffing my face with some heavy-duty carbs. "Yes, really," said Anne, giving me one of her long, forensic stares. She carefully placed her tablet on the bedside table and turned to face me square on. I had all of 1 nanosecond to prepare for the impending inquisition. "So, Lucy, eh?" she said. I instantly flushed a guilty red colour. Fuck, how the hell did Anne know about Lucy? Had she stuck electrodes on my head while I slept and downloaded my dream onto her iPad? I mean, did such software exist? Yes, probably. There's a fucking app for everything these days. What about Lucy, I said, gurning like a fool, in an attempt to conceal a plethora of micro-expressions that might just give me away. Anne was extremely gifted at reading people and was horribly au fait with my own little batch of tells, which is why, if I had a big fat lie to tell her, I usually found it best to do it after lights out and with my head facing towards the wall, and ideally Anne would also be fast asleep when I told her. "You were muttering her name. Nice dream, was it?" said Anne, twisting the screw by a couple of notches. No, it wasn't actually. There were the big, horrible monsters in it. Monsters? Really? Well, go on then. James, do tell me more about your monsters. I'd rather not, if that's all right. It was a pretty unpleasant dream, Anne. And one where I was nearly arse-raped by a flatulent troll, a detail that, oddly enough, I wasn't that keen on sharing with my long-term girlfriend. "What, even though it had the lovely Lucy in it?" she said. She's not lovely. God, I tell you what, Anne, she's a bloody nightmare half the time. Yes, but you have to admit, James, she is very easy on the eye. Anne was flying, digging pits and setting snares for me all over the show. If I hadn't been so busy trying to avoid her traps, then I would have stood up and applauded her. "Look, honey, Lucy's my employee. I really don't see her in that kind of way at all," which was true. Well, it was in the real world, at any rate. I mean, back in my fantasy dreamosphere, however, Lucy was naked Lady Galadriel on heat. Yes, Lucy was in my dream, but so what? I contended in my best outraged "you're really pursuing this" tone. It's pretty understandable, really, considering how much time we've been spending together. That last bit didn't quite work in my favour. It was a gift for Anne, however, who let the sentence hang in the air for a few beats before continuing. "Yes, I have noticed," she said finally. "So what exactly was she doing in your scary dream then?" No harm in an edited version, I thought. "Well, if you really want to know, Anne, she came along and turned all these trolls into stone." "Wow, quite the feisty little heroine, isn't she?" she sneered. No, she's not. It was a dream, Anne. It wasn't actually real." Almost imperceptibly, Anne edged in closer towards me. "So, did you fuck her then?" Her delivery was ridiculously matter-of-fact. It was like she was asking if I fancied a chocolate digestive or something. "What?" I exclaimed. "In your dream, did you fuck her?" "No, of course I bloody well didn't," I shouted indignantly, before yanking back the duvet and clambering out of bed. Truth was, Lucy Elf and I had only got as far as some naked straddling before the dream had dissipated. Not that I thought it was wise to try and make the distinction at this particular point. "All right, calm down, James," said Anne with a faint suggestion of a smile. "Well, really, what a thing to suggest," I said. "I was only asking. Anyways, it's not as if you would be properly culpable, even if you had slept with her, James." "But of course it wouldn't be my fault. It's a bloody dream, Anne. You can't exactly control what goes on in them, can you?" It was infuriating not knowing what Anne had on me in terms of what I had mumbled in my sleep. Had I just muttered Lucy's name, or had I also made some sort of sexually suggestive grunting sound to accompany it? As usual, it felt as if Anne had all the cards, and that at any moment she was going to reveal some damning proof of my virtual infidelity. God, James, He thinks you does protest just a little bit too much, said Anne. She was right. My protestations were being fueled by guilt. Guilt for having had my head stuck up the film's arse for the last 3 months. Guilt for failing to contribute sufficiently to household bills since we had moved in together. Guilt for not having a cohesive earning strategy or anything vaguely resembling a life plan. And now, guilt for having had an erotic dream featuring an attractive member of my crew. So, no penetration then? She asked. I'm actually just not going to dignify that with an answer, Anne. How about a bit of sucky-sucky? She said with a lewd smile and an equally lewd hand and mouth gesture. No, stop it, I said with a half smile, grateful for the arrival of a bit of humour at last. Oh, come on, James. Surely you must have, at the very least got a bit of tit. I mean, otherwise, what's the point in having a wet dream in the first place? Yes. It's very funny, Anne. Anne sprang over the bed and clasped both her hands around my face. Hey, don't take me so seriously, James. I haven't seen you all week, so I've had no one to torture. She gave me a mischievous smile and playfully yanked my cheeks. You know it's just for fun, don't you? Yeah, I know, I said, not actually at all convinced that this was just for fun, but still happy that I seemed to be out of the woods at last. It had been an acutely awkward and unnecessarily combative way to kick off the day, and didn't exactly fit with my concept of rest and recuperation. Anyway, do you want a cup of tea? I asked. Yeah, go on then. I pottered off towards the kitchen. Having eventually arrived back home at 11 p.m. on the previous evening and then collapsed into bed semi-clothed, I hadn't really taken in my immediate surroundings. Now, with shafts of crisp winter sunlight bursting through the windows, I couldn't help but notice the general skanky state of the apartment. It was as if Anne had implemented some sort of scorched earth policy. What with the copious amounts of domestic detritus scattered over every surface and piled up into every corner. Oddly, despite the fact that I'd spent hours tidying the apartment before I had left the week earlier, I was unfazed that the place had been so comprehensively trashed. On the contrary, I hoped our home's parlous and scuzzy state might highlight just how critical my role was in the smooth running of our household. After all, I may not bring back the bacon, but I did bring home the Mr. Muscle multitask bathroom cleaner. After a short archaeological dig to excavate a couple of mugs from under a pile of encrusted plates, I made the tea and returned to the bedroom. Blimey, I think we've been robbed, I chuckled, handing a mug over to Anne. What do you mean? Well, all the things everywhere. Anne continued to look bemused. James, what are you talking about? She said. The things, stuff everywhere. I've still no idea what you're chuntering on about. The mess. What mess? What do you mean, what mess? All the washing up and clothes and overflowing bins. I couldn't work out if Anne was being disingenuous or whether she really was totally and irritatingly oblivious to the slovenly wreck of our home. Looks pretty much like it normally does. No, it doesn't. I keep the house much tidier than this. Well, okay, it might be a bit messier, but to be honest, James, I've been so busy this week that I really haven't had time to dwell on it, all right? But don't you remember how tidy it was before I left last Sunday? Not really, no. What? What? You don't even have the faintest recollection. Look, James, cut in Anne, if you're after some sort of commendation for the housekeeping you did, then I'm afraid you ain't going to get it from me. If I had stopped there, right there, then I might have got away with it. But like a kid with a stick, I had to keep on poking away until something much angrier poked back at me. I'm not after a medal, Anne, but it would be nice, if you recognised my contribution to our domestic setup sometimes. Anne carefully put down her mug of tea and locked eyes with me. This might hurt. Well, James, by the same token, it would be nice if you recognised my singular contribution to providing a fucking roof over our heads. And here we were again. The oh-so-familiar battleground of who contributed what to our relationship. In the blue corner, there was I, the regularly skint one brimming over with creative schemes and dreams while willingly playing the role of Carson the butler to Anne's Lady Grantham. And there, in the red corner, was Anne, working her arse off in a stressful city job so that she could pay the mortgage and cover most of the bills while her boyfriend had a go at earning some dollar. But things were about to change. This time, one of my many dreams was about to burst through into palpable reality. And no, not the dream featuring the horny gay troll. Look, honey, I really appreciate how hard you work, I said. Really? Yes, I do. But, I too have been working very hard, and soon we're both going to be able to enjoy the fruits of my labours. What, you think this low-budget film of yours is the big one, do you? She said. Yes, I do. So not that half-written book you've got then? No. All those half-written plays? No. All those half-finished songs for that half-written musical of yours? She continued. I wondered what Anne had planned for the rest of our day together. Hopefully not more of this. My phone bleeped. Better just check that, I said, thankful for the distraction. It was a text from Lucy querying something on Monday's call sheet. I unearthed my production folder and double-checked some information before texting her back. So, who was that? Asked Anne. I looked up to the left, covered my eyes, and scratched my nose. Steve, I finally replied while turning vibrantly red. Are you sure it wasn't Lucy, James? My eyelids fluttered, my left foot began to tap uncontrollably, and I broke out in a cold sweat. Yes, I snapped back. So much for concealing those tells. Really? Said Anne, giving me one final chance to come clean. All right, it was Lucy. Then why lie? Because after all the hoo-ha to do with that erotic dream... Hang on, Anne interrupted. So you did have an erotic dream about Lucy? Shit, bollocks, arse, bollocks, shit. Yes. No. It wasn't really her. It looked more like a blend of her and Lady Galadriel. The elven queen from Lord of the Rings with, possibly a bit of Arwen thrown in. Anyway, look, she just pounced on me. And, there was nothing I could do about it. Not that we had sex, Anne. Absolutely not. And even if we had sex, it wouldn't, as you freely admitted, really have counted because it was just a dream. And at least it wasn't the troll, because to be honest with you, there was this moment in the dream when, oh God, make it stop, exclaimed Anne, holding her hands over her ears. Do you know something, James? Can we not talk about this dream ever again? Sure, suits me, I replied. Some people believe in the power of prayer. Me, I believe in the power of prattling. So, which one do you prefer? I'm not sure I really have much of a preference, Anne. Oh, come on, you must like one or the other. But I didn't. They were both plants, with leaves that were green. The plant on the left was a good foot taller than the plant on the right, but if I went with the taller plant, then it might appear that I was basing my decision purely on the quantity rather than the quality of the plant, which of course wouldn't wash with Anne at all. By this point in the morning, she needed to believe that I had exerted some genuine effort and that my opinion demonstrated a clearly considered thought process. So just plumping for the one with a longer stem and more leaves sadly wouldn't cut it. The problem was that even though we had been ploughing through that morning's itinerary at a fairly quick old lick, I hadn't been in full possession of my mental faculties for most of it. And my lack of engagement was really beginning to piss Anne off. Prior to arriving at the garden centre, the schedule had already taken us on a meandering tour of a number of antique shops. But already my recollection of that time was a foggy one. A blur of lamps, mirrors, toolboys, chests, dining tables, folding tables, occasional tables, and occasional conversations like this one. So, James, what do you think about this mirror? Yeah, great. Do you like it as much as the other one? Which other one? Well, the one that you said that you liked. Which one was that then? The one in the previous shop, James. Previous shop. Yes, the previous shop with the mirror similar to this one in it. Oh, I'm sorry, Anne. I don't remember that one. What, even though you said at the time that you liked it? I did? Yes, you said it was great. The thing was, after a week in the trenches, I really needed a break from making decisions and having opinions. If I could get away with not speaking to anyone about anything for the next few hours, then that would also be good. All I truly wanted to do was to lie down in a darkened room and watch Captain Scarlet thwart some Mysterons. Not much of an ask, really. But it was not to be. Anne was on a mission to wring out some form of meaningful communication between us before the day was through, even if that communication merely revolved around which plant we were going to buy for the living room. Come on, Sunderland. This is not just about a plant, it's about something much, much bigger. Come, fight through the fug and focus. I assessed the two plants again. I kind of like them both, I said, after a few moments of exaggerated consideration. It's difficult to come down on one side or the other. Anne pointed at the smaller plant. Oh, yes. So, what is it about this one that you like? The leaves, I replied confidently. All right, she said, turning to face the taller plant. And how about this one? Well, the leaves again, I said, with not quite so much confidence. So you like the leaves on both these plants, totally equally then, she said. Yeah. Anne wasn't going to let me off the hook so easily this time. So there's absolutely no way that you can differentiate between them both in terms of your own personal preference. Well, I guess at a push, maybe, yes, go on, James, urged Anne. Go on, take the plunge. I think I might prefer this one's pot, I said, indicating the larger plant. The pot. Yes, the pot. Is that a problem? Well, yes, I don't really give a stuff about the pot at this stage, James. The pot can be changed. In fact, we have the freedom to repot to our heart's content. What we really need to be concerning ourselves with is the sodding plant in the pot. Right, well, for what it's worth, that's my opinion, I said. Anne's irritation with me had reached fever pitch. What's your opinion? I mean, sorry, James, but I don't actually think you've given me one. Haven't I? Not about the fucking plants, no. My head hurt. I wondered if Anne would take pity on me and let me go home early. From the way she was now prowling round me like a seriously narked panther with a splinter in its claw, probably not. Look, just for a moment, James, imagine that your life depended on you making a decision. No, hang on a minute. Imagine that your relationship depended on you making a decision. So, on that basis, which plant would you choose? I shall give you 5 seconds. Anne began to slowly count down. I noticed that a female shop assistant was lingering within earshot and pretending to rearrange a display. I imagined that this sort of thing might make a good spectator sport if you were bored shitless. Okay, the taller one, I said, just as the doomsday clock struck 1, and paused for a moment to give me a long, hard stare. Is that just because it's taller, James? God damn it, no, I spluttered loudly, overcome with indignation. I knew you'd think that. I knew you'd assume that I was making a decision based solely on how many leaves we get for our buck. The shop assistant had stopped fiddling with the display and was instead concentrating her efforts on containing her mirth, a battle that she was fast losing. I figured that this was probably standard fare in her department, a feeble, opinionless bloke being slowly taken apart by a more highly evolved female. Much to my surprise, my little outburst had made Anne smile. My God, my boyfriend lives, she said, taking hold of my shoulders and shaking them. Fuck, James, it's good to see you animated about something at last. You've been wandering around like a bloody zombie all morning. Yeah, well, to be honest with you, Anne, I don't actually feel that well. What, because you've had to do some actual work at last? No, look, you don't understand, Anne. It's been brutal. Anne held back her laughter for all of 2 seconds before combusting. Brutal, you say? What's poncing around in a country mansion with a bunch of actors How can that be brutal? Tell me, James, is that the same kind of brutality that took place on Omaha Beach during the Normandy landings? This was outrageous. How dare she employ a Second World War reference, and a very specific and accurate one to boot, to make her point? That was my turf, my territory. She had never once managed to watch The Longest Day all the way through, let alone getting past the first half an hour of Saving Private Ryan. She just wasn't qualified to sling that sort of thing at me. No, don't be ridiculous, Anne, I said. Nobody's died, but, there have been injuries. Please, James, don't tell me that's a reference to that tiny scratch on your forehead. Annoyingly, my bandage-cum-turban hadn't survived the previous day's exertions on set, and the carefully smeared blood had rubbed off overnight. Alas, the remaining small cut hardly qualified as a combat injury. So much for being respected as the battle-weary returning hero. Well, I tell you what, it bled like fuck, I can tell you, I said, trying and failing to find the cut with my hand. And yet somehow you pulled through, James, Anne said with more than a hint of sarcasm. Wow, how heroic. My phone started to ring. Better get that, James. It might be the lovely Lucy. Oh no, not this again. There was no way that I was going to trot down that perilous path again today. I might have been running on 2 cylinders and only mentally fit enough to cope with a 1960s kids show featuring slow-moving marionettes, but I wasn't going to incur any more of Anne's wrath today. It was just too exhausting. I checked the caller ID on the phone. It said unknown. It's not Lucy, actually. I better take it, just in case. What, just in case it's the White House? Said Anne. I ignored the jibe and answered the phone. Hello? I said. Hi, James. It's Carol here. My stalker had returned, and her timing was monumentally terrible. Right. Hello, Carol, I said, with a nervous twitch, and the all-too-familiar sensation of hot poker guilt rampaging up my neck and across my face. It was ludicrous, really. I had absolutely no reason whatsoever to feel guilty, but faced with Anne mouthing, "Who's Carol?" at me with more than a tinge of menace in her eyes, there was no escaping the feeling that I had somehow done a great wrong and should be severely beaten. Look, Carol, it's quite tricky to talk right now, I continued. Can I call you back later? Sure. Okay, James, replied Carol, sounding ridiculously upbeat. Where on earth did Carol get her relentless optimism from? Didn't she realise by now that I had absolutely no intention of giving her a part in the film? What does she want me to do? Come out and be straightforward and honest with her? Didn't she know what a truly insane notion that was? Oh, and any idea when that might be? Carol quickly added. Soon, I replied. I realised too late that I had instinctively cut my hand around the phone's mouthpiece and turned 180 degrees away from Anne before taking the call. I had also adopted the muffled and self-censoring tone of someone plagued with guilt. Okay, well, I look forward to hearing from you soon, said Carol cheerfully. Yeah, me too. Bye now. I hung up and turned round to face Anne. So, Carol, one of your crew, is she? Lying really wasn't an option at this point. Not for ethical reasons, but for I was truly shit at it reasons. No, she's the barmaid in the local pub where we're shooting. The shop assistant was no longer even pretending to be working and was just standing there lapping up the free show. All she was lacking was some popcorn and a large cup of Coke. And she was calling you because she wants a part in the film. But she's a barmaid, James. Yes, not an actress. No. Okay, and she got your mobile number how exactly? It was kind of an accident, I said. She accidentally got your number. What, she just randomly dialed some numbers and they just happened to form the correct sequence? For a moment, I considered launching into the full, unabridged version of how Carol had come into possession of my number. But then I thought, what's the fucking point? It would just sound like so much bullshit, particularly as I was presently manifesting every physiological indicator of guilt that has ever been recorded. It was my own stupid fault. I shouldn't have said barmaid. I should have referred to Carol as a catering supervisor, a term that might have conjured up a picture of a thick-set 70-year-old dinner lady with varicose veins and a tray full of spam fritters. As it was, the term barmaid was just too easily associated with well-hoisted breasts and a cheery, flirtatious demeanour, and it would be this image that would now be indelibly printed in Anne's mind. I had been skating along on perilously thin ice ever since the Lucy dream. Now that ice might be beginning to crack. It doesn't matter how she got hold of my number, Anne. She just did, I said in a last-ditch attempt to defend myself. The bottom line is I'm not going to be giving her a part in the film, however much she pesters me about it. Again, I should have stopped there, but I didn't, for I was a twat. It does happen, you know, I added. Anne was hardly going to let that one slip past her. What happens, she said. Being targeted by wannabe actresses. It's an occupational hazard of being a film producer. Wow, so few words, and yet you say so much, James. Really? I replied, totally shitting myself. Yes, lover, because by saying this, you're A, claiming that you have an occupation, which, based on current raw data, plainly isn't true. B, suggesting that fending off overly keen actresses is somehow hazardous, though I presume that's not in the same way that working on an oil rig, for example, is considered hazardous. Or, am I wrong, and this is somehow a threat to your physical well-being, James? Anyway, finally, of course, and most importantly, C, strongly hinting that this sort of thing has happened to you before. So, has this sort of thing happened to you before, James? Once or twice, I said. Well, which is it, once or twice? Okay, it's happened a few times, but, but mostly via emails. So again, why lie to me, James? I wasn't lying. I was just using the expression once or twice to indicate that it wasn't exactly unprecedented. I'm sorry, James, but once or twice would suggest exactly that, once or twice before. Oh, come on, Anne, stop quibbling over semantics. I can quibble over whatever I fucking want, James. You are on an unbelievably dodgy ground at the moment. But I haven't done anything wrong, Anne. If that's true, then why the hell do you look and sound so bloody guilty then? I don't know. You just somehow make me feel guilty. You've got a talent for it. Right, so it's got absolutely nothing to do with your erotic dream and your busty barmaid then. I was starting to experience palpitations, which indicated that I was either pregnant or on the way to collapsing headfirst into the foliage. Despite the unpleasantness of what I presumed were stress-related symptoms, I did wonder if fainting might be the best way out of the current situation. After all, this was so not a battle I was going to win. On the upside, if I did take a tumble, then at least the potted plants would go some way to cushioning my fall. Look, can we just call a truce, please? I said. I'm not sure I'm really up for any more of this today. Okay, said Anne, taking out her smartphone with a dramatic flourish. How about we reschedule this discussion for, let's see now. How about February the 7th, the day after you finish shooting? Yeah, sure. Why not? I said. Though thinking about it, said Anne, are you sure that you'll have the energy, James? I mean, we could postpone it until, you've had a couple of months to fully recover from your brutal ordeal. I gave Anne a tired and hollow smile and focused on breathing slowly through my nose. My phone beeped. Ooh, a message. How exciting for you, said Anne with relish. I wonder from which of your ladies it's from. Here, I said, handing my phone over to Anne. Have a read. I've got nothing to hide. Anne paused, and for a fleeting moment it looked as if I may have successfully wrong-footed her. She muttered, pondering her next move. "No, really, do feel free to take a look," I said, with the unfamiliar sensation of empowerment. Now, what would have been truly fantastic at this point would have been if Anne had handed the phone back with the message unopened and the words, "It's all right, James, I do trust you." Instead, Anne merely shrugged and tapped the message icon. And then she burst out laughing. "So, what does it say?" I said. There you go. There you go, she said, before dissolving into a pile of shoulder-heaving hilarity. The message was from my honeymooning friend Mike and contained just one word: wanker. Chapter 15. The B&W eased its way onto the gravel with the sort of satisfying crunching sound that you only get with large and expensive saloons. I raised an arm in greeting while employing the broadest arse-licking smile I could muster. The car began to make its final approach to the house via a slow and majestic arc before finally rolling to a halt 20 yards away from me. I pushed the button on the walkie-talkie. "Andy, Operation Happy Set is go. I repeat, Operation Happy Set is go. Please copy." There was a moment's pause and then Andy's voice came crackling back over the airwaves. Copy that, Sparrowhawk. Operation Happy Set now in play." All I could do now was hope and pray that the silver-haired gentleman that had just stepped out onto the gravel would be so deeply impressed with our silky smooth filmmaking machine that he would feel compelled to invest another £20,000 into the film. For as things stood, we were fucked, which meant that the silver-haired gentleman, Roger Burke, was also fucked. Not that he knew it yet. Roger was our main cash investor and had already sunk £50,000 into the project. For this equity investment, he stood to gain a majority percentage share of net profits in the film once it had gone to market and had secured some international sales. Through these sales, he would, of course, also see a return of his original £50,000 loan. That was the plan. It did look very doable on paper and also very grown up. Much to my excitement at the time, the investor's contract had been drawn up by a specialist entertainment lawyer and contained esoteric Latin phrases such as pro rata pari passu, as well as exotic-sounding words like escrow. To a complete non-business head like me, these terms were very magical and exciting. Indeed, with documents like these, I thought, how could we fail? It was certainly a high-risk investment, but Roger happened to be a high-risk kind of guy with a portfolio of very successful businesses behind him. He was certainly not one to balk in the face of something as commercially challenging as the UK independent film industry. What Roger didn't realise as he stepped out on that particular cold and frosty morning was the extent to which we were currently pissing his original £50,000 up against a wall. To have any chance at all of selling the film, we needed to have a beginning, middle and end to our movie. Currently, with less than a week of scheduled shooting to go, we had a beginning, a few scenes from the middle, and no scenes whatsoever for the final act. It may well have been true that most films lose a percentage of scenes along the way due to stretched budgets, the vagaries of the weather and talent, and just plain old ballsed-up scheduling reasons. But we weren't even on track to have the basic plot covered. We were that screwed. During the course of our film's screenplay, various characters are bumped off by a mystery assailant, until finally, in the last act, and via a series of clever set-piece plot twists and turns, the identity of this murderer is revealed, followed by his inevitable demise at the hands of our unlikely hero, played by Tom, my unlikely hero, in fact. It was more Murder, She Wrote than dull M for murder, but still, the story had some good twists and turns and arguably a very exciting denouement. But that was on paper. In reality, we were en route to having a film that, after a promising setup and a single solitary murder, would inexplicably grind to a halt somewhere in the midst of Act 2. Tempting though it might then be to put up a caption saying, "To be continued," I couldn't see the film buyers in Cannes and Berlin falling for it. This wasn't The Fast and the Furious. We had no ongoing franchise model as such to fall back on. We had to, at the very least, have a complete story, and one with an ending. That was important. It must have an ending, which meant we really needed Roger's money. And we needed Roger's money now. The penny had finally dropped in terms of just how buggered we were on the evening of my return from London. Diane had been putting in some overtime on her day off to see if we could conceivably have a finished and coherent film with only 6 days of scheduled filming left. Her alarming conclusion, which she then shared with Steve and I, was that we would either have to do a complete rewrite of the remaining script that would somehow work with what we had already shot while also delivering a satisfactory and credible ending, or we would have to extend the shooting schedule by another 6 days so that we could actually complete the film as intended. I knew we had been slipping inexorably behind, but this bit of news still came as a nasty, sickly shock. After all we had been through, we were staring defeat in the face, and the whole ghastly, grim truth of it all made me feel physically ill. As we plainly didn't have the budget for an extended shoot, Steve and I decided to have a go at rewriting the script, which meant firstly rejigging the plot. Armed with a pad of multicoloured sticky notes, some coloured string, courtesy of Diana's mobile stationery department, and a generous dollop of frenzied panic, we retired that evening to Steve's digs to try and totally reconfigure the plot of our movie. 3 hours and 2 bottles of red wine later, we had successfully covered one wall of Steve's bedroom with sticky notes interconnected with bits of coloured string. Each note had a suggested plot point, character name or scene number written on it. It was very impressive to look at, like one of those crime wall collages that crop up in police dramas. Despite the immense challenge of coming up with a revised plot that dovetailed perfectly with the footage that we had already shot, as well as working on a creative and logistical level, we both felt confident that we had cracked it and that, against all the odds, we had found a hidden pass through a previously unassailable mountain range. So pleased were we with our endeavours that we took a picture of the wall and at the following day's emergency production meeting presented the picture with a triumphant flourish to Diane and Lucy. Unfortunately, in the cold light of day and without our red wine goggles on, we weren't quite so excited by what we had produced. Neither were our continuity lady or production manager. On the scheduling front, Diane estimated that our new plot would take an additional 3 weeks to shoot, while in terms of the newly created story itself, Lucy wasn't exactly backward in coming forward when she described it as total shite. We were left with no choice. We had to raise some more money immediately and extend the shoot. In terms of investors, our man Roger was the obvious target, as he currently stood to lose the most if we didn't complete the film. Realising that it wasn't exactly going to be an easy thing to broach with him, we decided to first soften him up with a set visit. There is a long tradition of set visits for those who have some sort of stake in a film production. It is an opportunity to show a studio head or financial backer that you haven't, in fact, bet all their money on a 51 outsider at the 3:30 at Newmarket, but that you really are busy ploughing it into what will soon become their very own field of dreams. Build it and they will come. And they will buy tickets and merchandise. And you, Mr. Moneyman, will see a big, fat return. Just prior to Roger's arrival, I had gathered together all the crew for yet another emergency meeting. By this point, we were having so many emergency meetings that, for the sake of clarity with the senior staff, i.e. Steve, Diane and Lucy, I was grading them as either a real emergency, an extreme emergency, or a really fucking extreme emergency. This one, understandably, came under the latter banner heading. Thankfully, everyone had signed up to another week of filming beyond the original 3 weeks, but without the £20,000, we wouldn't be able to pay anyone. Nor would we have a camera, lights, food, or even a location. The bottom line was this. Our creaking filmmaking unit had 4 days of fuel left, and then its engine would cut out and we would grind to a halt. This, of course, was privileged information and on a need-to-know basis only. And as I figured most people didn't really need to know the extent to which we were fucked, I decided to keep it off the agenda. After praising everyone for the umpteenth time for their sterling work on the film, I informed them about Roger's impending visit and requested that everyone made a special effort to make him feel at home. For example, it would be nice if you could all spend a little time explaining to him what your actual individual roles are, I suggested. Roger hasn't been on a set before, so it's all going to be very new and exciting for him. I could show him around the art department, said Amy. Lots of stuff to see there. That was the sort of can-do spirit that I really wanted to hear. Thanks, Amy, that's a great idea, I said. I'm not sure you're going to have time for that, Amy, came the voice of Danny Doom. We're going to need you on set for standby props. Oh, I'm sure Amy can nip off for a little while, with Roger, without it being a problem, Danny, I said while digging a pen into the palm of my hand. Yeah, it'll be fine, Danny boy, said Amy, eyeballing Danny with barely disguised contempt. I'm sure you'll cope without me. Oh, I'm sure we will cope, Amy, Danny replied with a sneer. After all, we've been having to cope on numerous occasions already, but that's not the point. The clue, Amy, is in the name. Hey, Danny, will you just give it a break? Said Toby, entering the fray. Amy's got enough on her plate without you having a go at her every 10 seconds. Well, actually, Toby, we've all got a lot on our individual plates, continued Danny remorselessly. I, for example, am camera operator, as well as director of photography. That's 2 pretty important and demanding roles, don't you think, Toby? Yeah, and don't we just know about it, said Amy. Geez Louise, this was just the sort of sniping and bitching that needed to be put on ice for a while. That Danny was at the epicentre of crew discontent hadn't exactly passed me by, but I couldn't highlight this fact, at least not publicly, for fear that he would walk and leave us completely up shit alley. Look, everyone, I really need us all to pull together on this one, I said, making sure that I addressed the room and not just Danny. I know that everyone's, a bit wary and there are concerns that we might not be able to shoot some of the scenes in time, but I assure you, we will make it to the end and you, all of you, will be extremely proud of the result. I spotted Steve sticking up a thumb and smiling. Perhaps I was getting a grip on this people management thing at last. I noticed Sasha making a slight nodding action and Kate almost smiling. These were small but encouraging signs, I thought. So please, folks, for the sake of our visiting investor, can we have a happy set today? So how's it going, James? Inquired Roger as we crossed the threshold into the entrance hall. Pretty good, thanks, Roger, I enthused. We're capturing some great performances. Roger paused for a moment to look up at the ornate plasterwork on the high vaulted ceiling of the main hall. Impressive location, he said, nodding with approval. What is it, Georgian? Yes, built in 1765 in the Palladian style that was very popular with landed gentry at this time, I said, slipping effortlessly into tour guide mode. Guess shooting in a place like this must help in terms of the overall look of the film. Oh yes, it's definitely going to give us a real edge in terms of production values, Roger. And that'll help when you come to sell it, yeah? Oh, undoubtedly, Roger. The Americans in particular are going to lap it up. They love all that English heritage Downton Abbey thing. Oh yeah. Roger nodded and smiled. Yes, I could see how that might work for you. I mean, for us. We carried on walking across the vast hall towards the main stairs, with Roger admiring the paintings and furnishings as we went. This was good. The house was playing its part perfectly, and even I was coming across with some credibility. It was almost as if I understood how all this film business stuff worked. All we needed now was a non-dysfunctional and working film set, and we were actually in with a chance. Perfectly on cue, Lucy appeared from the direction of the green room and walked over to join us. Her hair, which was usually tied up in a bun, was cascading over her shoulders, and she looked positively perky. I had hoped that she might wear a slightly more revealing top than usual, but I couldn't complain. She had definitely put in some effort to look particularly presentable in honour of our guest. We needed to throw everything we had at getting Roger to sign us another cheque. The alternative scenario, the one where I screened a half-finished film to Roger and the other investors, was too ghastly to even contemplate. Fuck, by this stage of the game, I would have happily dressed up in a gimp suit and given him a twerk-tastic lap dance if I had thought this would actually secure the funding. This is my production manager, Lucy, I said. Pleased to meet you, Lucy. I'm Roger Burke, said Roger, taking hold of Lucy's hand and leaning in towards her. Very nice to meet you, Roger, said Lucy, shaking his hand but failing to dip forward to receive Roger's kiss. It was a painfully awkward moment. If not for Roger, then it certainly was for me, and I couldn't help but give Lucy a reproachful glare. Goodness, what was her problem? It was only going to be a peck on the cheek. It wasn't as if Roger was going to stick his tongue down her throat. Then why didn't you kiss him then? Asked Lucy, when I eventually, and rather boldly, brought this matter up. Well, I would have if I knew that's what he had wanted. Well, maybe he did, and you just misread the signs, James. Well, as it happens, James, I don't have a tradition of kissing complete strangers. He wasn't a complete stranger, Lucy. He was our main investor. Well, he was a stranger to me. And anyway, James, I washed and blow-dried my fucking hair for him. We ascended the sweeping staircase and headed towards the main bedroom floor where that morning's first camera setup was going to be. Despite the slight misstep with the greeting, Operation Happy Set was going to plan. Lucy was making the effort to be charming, and Roger was obviously enjoying her company. Meanwhile, I kept on with my ploy of emphasising just how brilliantly everything was going in terms of what footage we were getting, while occasionally dropping into the conversation the phrase, slightly behind schedule. I hoped that by the time Roger had completed his set visit, he would equate quality with being slightly behind schedule, and therefore fully embrace the idea that our tardy progress was somehow a prerequisite for a better film. There was a whopping fat chance that he might see through this ruse, but it was definitely worth giving it a go. It's been quite amazing watching just how well Steve and the crew have been able to tease out such fantastic performances from the actors, I said as we reached the top floor and began walking down the main corridor. I do believe we're really capturing something special here, Roger. Obviously, this careful crafting and honing process does mean that we're now slightly behind schedule. Ah, James, do you mind if we have a quick word? Sir Hugh had appeared from nowhere. He may still have been in his dressing gown and coated it in a fine layer of croissant and jam, a pilfered from our location breakfast, of course, but there was something about him that suggested that he meant business. In my role of elusive location manager, I had pretty much managed to avoid him so far, sending Lucy in to deal with him whenever we had actually needed something. But I had a feeling that a day of reckoning would inevitably come when, amongst other things, the words chaise and long would be uttered, along with the presentation of a hefty bill for some specialist renovation work. I'm a bit caught up at the moment, Sir Hugh, I said, attempting to steer Roger past him. Can I come and find you a bit later? I'm just showing Roger here around the set. Sir Hugh looked directly at Roger and offered his hand. Ah, hello, Roger. Welcome to my home. It was an impressive blocking manoeuvre that also, in the most charming way possible, said, Now, you're on my turf, so don't even dare think about ignoring me. Good to meet you, said Roger, shaking his hand. It really is a lovely place you have here, unbelievably grand. Oh, thank you, yes. It's been in our family seat since the mid-18th century. Well, it's a very impressive place and a perfect location for the film. Yes, came Sir Hugh's vague response. There was something indistinct and fluctuating about Sir Hugh. It was like he was an analogue radio with an intermittent signal, sometimes present, sometimes just white noise burbling away in the ether. He was also a strange old bastard. Do you ride, Roger? No, I don't, replied Roger. Sir Hugh looked genuinely perplexed by this revelation. "Oh," he muttered. I made an attempt to extract us from the impasse. "So, if I could just get back to you in a little while, Sir Hugh?" I said. Sir Hugh ignored me and continued to address Roger. Do you shoot?" he asked. Again, I'm afraid I don't," said Roger, starting to look a bit ill at ease in his dealings with the old man with breakfast stains down his front and a cryptic line in small talk. "Oh, I see. So what do you do exactly?" "I have stakes in a number of businesses," Roger replied. There was an uncomfortable pause while Sir Hugh digested another fact about Roger that he found distinctly unpalatable. "Oh, right, so you sort of dabble in the world of business then, do you?" As polite and forbearing as Roger was being, I could see that Sir Hugh's supercilious and peremptory tone was beginning to get on his tits. Fortunately, Lucy was on hand to save the situation. "James, shall I show Roger to the set while you have that chat with Sir Hugh?" "Yes, good idea, Lucy," I said. "Roger, I'll leave you in the more than capable hands of Lucy, if that's all right. I shouldn't be very long." "Sure," said Roger, obviously relieved to have been relieved. "Nice to meet you, Sir Hugh," he said, giving Sir Hugh a quick acknowledging nod before escaping down the corridor with Lucy. I turned to face Sir Hugh. "So, how can I help?" Perhaps it's best you accompany me to my study," he replied. "There are one or two financial matters that I need to discuss with you." "Certainly," I said. Bollocks. This sounded costly, both in terms of time and money, and if it involved the chaise longue, it could also be very embarrassing. My original plan had been to come clean about the broken seat at the end of the shoot, where a heartfelt apology accompanied by a cheque would hopefully have soothed away any awkwardness about our failure to inform Sir Hugh about the damage in the first place. Now, with my contingency fund long gone, the only cheque I could offer him at the moment was a bouncy one. It seemed to take an age to descend to the study on the ground floor. Sir Hugh's attire was only fit for slow padding, and he constantly kept pausing to point out to me various stern-looking ancestors that had been immortalised in oil and then screwed to the wall. I couldn't help but think that each portrait, whether it be of a battle-worn admiral or a venerable bishop, was staring accusingly down at me as if to say, "There's the bastard who broke our favourite chair." During this irritatingly slow meander, Sir Hugh also learnt that, like Roger, I neither shot nor rode animals, a fact that seemed to cause him actual physical pain. On arriving in the study, Sir Hugh gestured to an old knackered armchair, while he himself ascended a wooden dais on which his imposing oak desk was tethered. I sunk down into the chair, which smelt of dead horses, and felt like it was about to collapse in on me at any moment. High above me on his elevated stage, Sir Hugh began shuffling through some paperwork. "Right, now if you just excuse me for a moment," he mumbled. This was getting excruciating. How on earth did I manage to get dragged down here and into the old man's lair on such an important morning as this? I decided to take the opportunity to quickly check in with Andy on set. Quick, of course, my arse. "Andy, has the package been delivered?" I said into the walkie-talkie. Which package?" Andy replied. "The very important package, Andy." What's inside the package?" "There's nothing inside the package, Andy. It refers to the very important person." "Oh, you mean the investor?" Yes, the investor. I thought we were going to call him Eagle." "No, Andy, he's the package. Okay, look, we went through all this last night." "Yes, but I thought we were going to call him the Eagle so that when he turned up, I could say, 'The Eagle has landed.'" I had grown fond of Andy. After all, he had in just 2.5 weeks gone from runner to first assistant director. But there were times when I really wanted to pummel him until he bled. This was one of those times. "Okay, Andy, let's just call him the Eagle. So, has the Eagle landed?" "Affirmative, Sparrowhawk." "Does the Eagle look comfortable in his nest?" "Yes, he's been shown round by Barn Owl." It was Andy's idea to use call signs. I never should have indulged him. "Who's the frickin' barn owl?" I said. "Steve." "Right, so where's Lucy?" What bird of prey is Lucy, James?" "What? Lucy is Lucy. She doesn't need to be a bird." "Oh, I just thought that was our theme today for our call signs. Lord, give me strength." "All right, okay, let's call her Red Kite," I said. "I'm not sure that's a bird of prey. I think they're more like scavengers, James." "Andy, it doesn't matter. I just need to know that everything is okay on set." "Do you know, I think that young chap of yours might have a point," said Sir Hugh, smiling down at me from on high. "They certainly mainly eat carrion, but on the other hand, I've also got a feeling that they prey on small mammals too." I gave Sir Hugh a faint smile. "Right, interesting. Red Kite is also with barn owl and eagle, and they all seem happy." "I think I've got a book on the subject," continued Sir Hugh, getting up from his chair and turning to face a tall bookcase. "It would be interesting to find out, would it not?" Yes, I suppose it would," I said. Lord, give me strength and a very fast helicopter that could whisk me away from this mad fucking house. "Oh, just one more thing, Sparrowhawk," said Andy. "I'm not quite sure where George is." "What? So, when was he last seen?" I said. "I saw him in makeup, but he hasn't been seen since," replied Andy. "I think his absence is starting to make Danny twitchy. A missing George and a twitching Danny. Not exactly the sort of combination I was hoping for this morning. Look, Andy, I'll be up soon. In the meantime, find George." Having eventually managed to persuade Sir Hugh to put his Red Kite research to one side, we finally got round to the first item on his agenda. Pheasants. That's right, pheasants. Apparently we had inadvertently defrosted a large chest freezer that was full of them. "I'm really sorry about that, Sir Hugh. A crew member must have accidentally turned the freezer off." "Yes, it's a shame, isn't it? 65 birds in all that we've had to throw out. Dreadful waste." I didn't want to ask, but I had to move things on as quickly as possible. "That's right. So, how much has that put you out of pocket, Sir Hugh?" "Well, let's see now. £15 per bird, so that's 15 times 65, which, hang on a minute. I'm sure I've got a calculator here somewhere." I couldn't wait for Sir Fafalot to unearth his calculator from the heaving piles of debris on his desk. Don't worry, Sir Hugh, I can work that out for you myself. Look," I said, tapping away on my phone. "That's £975 in total." "Right, nearly £1,000, eh?" Sir Hugh said, sounding distinctly pleased with the resulting figure. I had no idea how much pheasants cost, but considering the countryside seemed to be littered with them, I found it hard to imagine that their scrawny, pellet-ridden bodies were somehow worth £15 a pop. Unfortunately, I was hardly in a strong position to argue. This was Sir Hugh's house, and even though we had already agreed via my emissary, Lucy, another £7,000 for a further week's worth of filming, he hadn't, of course, received his cheque. If I pissed him off now, he might just demand the £7,000 up front in used notes, which was obviously something that was currently beyond my means. "Okay, well, I'll add that to the location for you, and again, sorry about your loss, about the loss of your birds, or rather their ruination." Pheasant ruination. Now, there was something I never thought I would find myself apologising for. Sir Hugh picked up and stared closely at a piece of paper on his desk. "Oh, yes, and now for the other matter. Right, now, according to these calculations..." This had to be it. The chaise-longue saga was about to come to an expensive conclusion. I bowed my head into a familiar posture of penitence. "You've been using much more heating than we ever expected you to use when we first agreed you coming here. And what with the current price of oil, I'm afraid I'm going to have to levy a further £1,000 charge. I presume that this, together with the pheasant compensation, can be weathered sufficiently by your contingency fund, James." "Fuck yes, Sir Hugh. Didn't you know that my contingency fund is a bottomless pit of cash? Do feel free to tuck in and stuff as much loot as you can into your grubby dressing gown pockets." "Oh well, in for a penny, in for another grand. It was all going to be academic anyway if Roger didn't come through for us today. Oh yes, no problem, Sir Hugh, I said, finally, with cheery confidence. Well, that's good to hear. I wouldn't want you to come unstuck because of it. No, we're in pretty good shape at the moment, I continued with my filthy lies. Well, I'm very glad to hear that. Well, if that's everything, Sir Hugh, I said, getting to my feet in anticipation of being finally released from his clutches. Sir Hugh stood up and offered out his hand. Yes, I believe so. Thank you for taking the time to come and see me. Yeah. My pleasure, Sir Hugh, I said, stepping forward and stretching out one arm upwards in an attempt to reach his hand. From such an awkward and lowly position, this manoeuvre was far from being a pleasure as such, but then I guess that was the point, really. Sir Hugh obviously wanted to conclude our dealings with a clear statement about the divine order of things, i.e., he was my sovereign lord, and I was down here, a snivelling little peasanty person. Oh, before you go, said Sir Hugh, handing me a small scrap of paper, here's my bank details so you can transfer the funds directly into my account. You use internet banking, I presume? Yes, I do. Splendid. That will save you the bother of writing me a cheque and will also, I believe, mean that you avoid any unnecessary bank charges. Yes, it will, Sir Hugh. Thank you. I really didn't see that one coming. I was depending on Sir Hugh being so utterly ancient and out of touch with technology that I would be immune to stunts like this. What did the old boy know about internet banking? From what I could see, he didn't even possess a bloody computer. Do you think you'll be able to do that today? He continued on relentlessly. Well, I'll probably need to sort out the paperwork first, I said, attempting to stall him. Get my legal team to draw up a supplementary contract for the extra location days. Oh, I think we can avoid all that unnecessary paperwork, James, Sir Hugh said with a dismissive wave of his hand. As a direct descendant of William Conqueror, I think you can trust me on this. After all, my word is my bond. Right, super. I'll get the wheels in motion then on that one, I said, while making my way towards the door. Marvellous. I look forward to seeing my account being credited with it today then. I'm not sure if it's that instantaneous, Sir Hugh. Really? From what I understood, as we are both with the same bank, the funds will be credited on the same day. Of course, not being a computer whiz, I might have got that wrong. No, I think, thinking about it, you're probably right, I said, with a brittleness that betrayed my festering irritation. I got used to Danny willfully batting me about as if I were a blind three-legged mouse on the end of a piece of elastic, but being so easily toyed with by Sir Hugh took me into a totally new realm of pulverised self-esteem. So, anyway, I look forward to seeing the full amount of... Sir Hugh paused to do a bit of mental number crunching. £10,975 in total being credited to my account then. OK, I said, swinging open the door. No, hang on a minute, that can be right. Sorry, Sir Hugh, did you say 10,975? Yeah, that's correct, he replied. 1,975 for heating and pheasant compensation and £9,000 for the extended location hire. £9,000, not £7,000. Okay. I pushed the door closed again and took a couple of steps back towards his elevated throne. The wily old bastard might be holding the high ground, I thought, but I wasn't going to be played that easily, and I was being played. I knew for a fact that Lucy had, on my behalf, successfully negotiated £7,000 in a face-to-face meeting with Sir Hugh. The only problem with this deft bit of wheeling and dealing was that, like all our rushed renegotiations with cast and crew, there was no actual paper trail to prove it. It was Hugh's word against Lucy's. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Sir Hugh. I thought we'd agreed 7,000 for the extra week. Oh no, I'm sure it was 9,000, James, he countered. In fact, I remember the conversation with your production girl extremely clearly. The gloves were off. Lucy had been downgraded to production girl, and Sir Hugh was now sat there staring defiantly back at me. I was just about to speak when I suddenly recalled something regarding the art of successful negotiation. My recollection was a bit vague, but it definitely had something to do with using silence as a negotiating weapon. The question was, when should I be silent? Should it be now, or should I say something else and then retreat into silence again? Sir Hugh seemed to be basking in the silence. So did this mean that at that very moment he was busily attempting to out-silence me, or was it just purely coincidental that he had gone mute on me? Fuck, I wish I could remember the mechanics of it all. As it turned out, the silence was broken by Andy. Black Harrier cawing, "Sparrowhawk, come in, Sparrowhawk." I looked down at the walkie-talkie in its holster and then back up at Sir Hugh. Sir Hugh smiled and seemed to make a go ahead and answer it kind of gesture with one eyebrow. At least that's how I interpreted it. Was this a trap? If I now spoke to Andy, did that mean that Sir Hugh had won the silence wars? Black Harrier calling, "Sparrowhawk, are you receiving?" Sir Hugh began sorting some papers into different piles. It was difficult to judge whether this was legitimate sorting or a cunning feigning action on Sir Hugh's part. It was all too much. I had to know if Andy had found George or not. I held up the walkie-talkie and pushed the button. "Go ahead, Andy," I said, still half mesmerised by Sir Hugh's paper sorting action. "George has been located," said Andy. "Great. Well done. Are you both now on set?" Negative. I found him asleep in the wardrobe department. We're both still there." "Right, well, get into the set as soon as possible, Andy." I think you might need a moment, James, and possibly some black coffee." Shit. I knew only too well what that meant. "Right, Andy, get some black coffee in him and then get him on set as soon as he's presentable." Roger that." George was pissed again. What a complete cock. I turned and opened the door. I'm going to have to go," I said. Sir Hugh looked up and smiled. "Right, well, I'm glad we managed to clarify that. £9,000 it is then."